Hello and welcome to the part 2 of the Wood Elf Realms Army List Guide. I'm joined again by Phil.
Hey.
Who has just had to say hi twice because
I'm
we've done
getting
these
really good
intros
at
back
it.
to back. Yeah. Well, this is it. This is part 2. If you've not watched the first part, I will put it in the cards. I think they're called at the top of the screen here. And let's get on with the guide basically. And we're going to be doing all of the infantry, cavalry, monsters, and things like that in this part.
Well,
right. So moving on to Glade Riders, we've got classic fast cavalry unit. They're 18 points, weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, strength toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 4. With elven reflexes, so that'll be 5 on the charge, or when charged, I suppose. 1 attack and leadership 8. And you've got light cavalry, as well as the fast cavalry rule, and skirmishers. So basically, if you're in an open order, I suppose you're light cavalry, fast cavalry, open order. So if you're in an open order, you can march and turn 90 degrees at the end, is the fast cavalry rule, or you can be in skirmishers. What to say about these? I think there's quite a lot to say about these ones, Bill.
I do. Yeah. I mean, they're a core choice for a start, so that's obviously an important factor to think about in terms of like what allowance they're coming out from. And I think that's a strong point in their favour.
So 5 of them being like 92 points is nothing to sniff at. Like the minimum 5 size of a fast cavalry unit is still very useful as a redirector, and still coming in sub 100 points, you can definitely keep this unit that come with cavalry spears, longbows. You can keep them to like a similar price to mounted yeomen for Bretonians, for example, and that is a really, really good place to be in, I think.
And they've got the usual arrow choices.
Should we give can I guess what you would say at this point?
Try and guess.
So this is the bit we come into filming 2 days after, but I'm gonna just guess the arcane bodkins and hagbane tips, or hagbane tips, I suppose.
Maybe, or true flight arrows, because you're going to be moving a lot. So again, not taking the penalty is pretty good, and then it's cheaper. It's cheaper to take true flight arrows.
Yes, I suppose, yeah. Do you know what? So between the first and second part of this guide, I actually played a Wood Elf army. And
in a tournament?
Yeah, man. And the arcane bodkins were insanely good against my dwarfs. I thought it was a real good choice. It wouldn't put me off doing those other 2 options, but I definitely think a strong choice just in pretty much all situations. Because even where you need 6s to wound, the arcane bodkins are usually going to come in, because the higher armor save is usually paired with a higher toughness.
Yeah. I agree. And I think I've only used them with true flight arrows so far. And although they were effective, they didn't actually kill much. And I mean, 1 unit of 5, you're never going to kill loads of stuff with 1 unit of 5. But because you've just not got enough shots, you're not hitting enough at high enough strength that you're going to do a lot of casualties. But they didn't. They were useful in terms of moving around, blocking stuff off, being annoying.
Yeah.
That's how I've found so far. But I think there is a strong case, like you say, for arcane bodkins.
Yeah, I think the arcane bodkins came in just that it was the entire army had arcane bodkins, so it was the easiest thing for him to remember. Now,
that's a very relevant consideration, though.
The true flight arrows, ignoring the -1 to hit, is definitely a positive. It's just a shame it doesn't give you actual quick shot or move and shoot. Quick shot would be real nice to pair with the fire and flee that Glade Riders have, to be able to shoot fire and flee from any range.
It does give you quick shot.
Boo. And that brings us to the end of the characters. Next, we go on to the the mainstays of the list, definitely. And they've handily put the two comparative units next to each other. Well, two of the comparative units. We've got the Glade Guard and the Deepwood Scouts for 11 and 13 points, respectively. You've got Weapon Skill, Ballistic Skill 4 on both, 5 on the Lord's Bowman on each, because they're an archer unit. You've got essentially the same profile on both, Strength, Toughness 3, 1 wound, Initiative 4, 1 attack, Leadership 8. And you've got a minimum unit strength of 5, which I think is excellent excellent for the elves in how low it is. Asari longbows for the 32-inch range. All of the arrow types to be upgraded to. You can take full command, but I would probably only take the champion and musician if I was taking any.
Agreed.
And 0-1 Glade Guard per army can take Fire and Flee, Vanguard, or a Magic Standard, so that would be where like a big unit with a Razor Standard could come in.
Or the Banner of Midsummer's Eve, yeah.
Yeah. Or that. We've got Glade Guard, or the difference between them is that Deepwood Scouts gain Scouts, Skirmishers, and Fire and Flee. Although, obviously not so long. Oh, and Evasive, yeah. Whereas, obviously, Glade Guard 0-1 can have Fire and Flee anyway. And they fill in different roles, I suppose. Like, you've got the Skirmishers within Deepwood Scouts playing into, again, the manoeuvrability of the army. It's where the army starts operating a lot differently than other old world armies. Like, it's less rank and flanky, more all skirmishing.
Yeah, so Glade Guard are a 1+ choice, so you've got to include at least one. But as you've said, that's only 5.
Yeah,
so it's not much tax. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like Deepwood Scouts are an outrageous bargain at 2 points more. I suppose 11 points might be too much for Glade Guard. I don't think it is, but you're getting way more than 2 points of value out of the difference there. Because just to be skirmishers, I would say justifies that, probably. But then your Scouts as well, and Fire and Flee, and Evasive. I mean, Evasive, maybe people aren't shooting at you that much, but that's just excellent. Really good. And you can take 0-1 unit of Deepwood Scouts as core for 1,000 points. So you're just going to do that, I think. At least one. I mean, maybe in a 2,000 point army you don't take 2. It depends on how you see the balance of. But I can't see why you wouldn't do that with at least one unit. So I think Deepwood Scouts are very good. But in terms of Glade Guard, like, this is where, like you say, the unit. No, I suppose for both, but obviously with Glade Guard being like the core, sort of main, like basic infantry choice. There's not much incentive to take big units, I don't think. Outside of maybe taking one with a magic banner, that would be the time you'd do it, probably. Why? It's not obvious why you would, if you were optimizing your army, take bigger units than 5, I don't think.
No, I think the classic MSU army is the Wood Elf list, and it carries on through into this edition.
Yeah. And it just means that your opponents, like, wasting their turns chasing after, 5-man units that cost 55 points. Okay, then you're going to give them some arrows and stuff. Yeah, so there'll be a little bit more. But if you deploy them carefully, then so that they don't get chained through, it's going to be really annoying, that. Just, like, not giving away many points in these small, annoying units.
Yeah, I think it is... How to say this? I think you've got to watch when you're playing with friends how many 55-point units that you take. Because
so I was thinking about this today. Because I was thinking, well, you could have, I think, 50 for like roughly 600 points. So 10 units of 5. And then it's a question of what arrow upgrades, you give them exactly where that comes out. But that is very achievable in a 2,000-point army to have like 10 units of 5. It would be so annoying.
Yeah, well, it comes. I think it starts. Do you know, like when we break it down to them sort of levels that are achievable in this Wood Elf list? That's when you start looking at armies that are like, I'm going to take 1,000 points worth of individual dragon ogres, or I'm going to take 1,500 points worth of gyrocopters and gyrobombers. And do you know, like,
stop talking about my army plans.
Yeah, I'm going to take a dwarf longbeard unit with a Thane BSB, and I'm going to have 3 runes of battle on one, and I'm going to have 2 runes of battle on the other, and have 7 static combat res while in a marching column, and then bounce people off the boards with my 1,500 points worth of gyrocopters. It's like that. These 5-man units have the potential to be that levels of enraging.
They do. Yeah. So for my actual army, the armies I'm actually currently building for 2,000-point games, I think I've got like 3 units of Glade Guard, and I think there's only 1 minimum size in there. It's just a bit too much. But there's no reason to take 15 or 20 in a unit. I mean, well, maybe with the Razor Standard, but like outside of that, I don't think you do that. No, but I think you don't take 10 units of 5 either. That's a bit empty.
I think you can definitely do more than 1 unit of the 5. It's like, look at how everyone else is playing in the area and just tailor to suit. But if we're talking optimals, I agree with you, Phil. Like, doing 5-man units and having stacks and stacks of them is a valid, like, contender for that sort of play style. Let's move on before we get into this. Oh, in terms of let's do arrows. I was going to swiftly move us on before we get too deep.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fair. I think like my go-to on the Glade Guard is either Arcane Bodkins or Hagbane Tips. Those are the 2 I would tend to pick. They are the more expensive ones, but I think they're just, you're going to face a lot of stuff with armor, so it's good to ignore it or reduce it. And you're going to, poison's just good generally. Like skinks have survived from being poisoned since goodness knows how long, and also it's good against the higher toughness stuff. So that's my sort of thinking there, and try and keep it simple, because otherwise I'm going to forget which unit's got which, and that is actually a consideration.
Yeah, like I agree with you on the choices. I always tend towards the armor piercing stuff, because there's always going to be that annoying unit of knights that you're just like, oh, it's come down to this, I've just got to pepper them and potentially even just ignoring things with light armor and shields is safe entirely. Cutting out an entire like step within the process of killing something. I know that happens with poisoned, but -2 is a 2 swing rather than like relying on I don't know, it feels better to me. They're completely different calculations, but it just feels better to me. Like,
I think mathematically there is not a massive difference from what I've seen. I haven't performed the calculation myself.
Right, okay. Game experience needed in hundreds of games, more than we've had time to do within the old release schedule. Right. On to I know this is we've actually run quite long here. We've been talking for quite a while, but Internal Guard, this is where we actually, I think, disagree a fair amount.
I think, yes, yeah.
So at 13 points a model, Phil is wrong, and at movement 5, weapon skill 5, strength toughness 3, initiative 4 with elven reflexes taking them to 5, 1 attack and leadership 9. They've got Asari Spears, which are AP -1 fighting extra rank, and have martial prowess, so can fight on the side in additional rank as well as the front. You got Close Order.
And, well, Asari Spears get +1 initiative when they're charged as well.
Ah, there we go. So you're going to be initiative 6.
It's quite good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got Move Through Cover, Stubborn, and you can take a few things. So you can take Drilled, which is an incredible rule. At only 1 point a model, definitely worth taking. Veteran
Agree.
is a good rule, but at Leadership 9 I wouldn't say it's as necessary as Drilled and as necessary as in some other places where you might be like Ogres on Leadership 7 that definitely need the Veteran. Full Command, definitely worth it in this unit.
Of course.
Yes. And I'm saying it feels wrong, but I only have experience playing elves, right? So do you want to give us your thoughts, and then I will, I don't know, babble on about something that people should turn off about.
So I feel like they are just very expensive for the role they have in the army, and that some of what they pay points for doesn't really help them out. So 13 points, and they've obviously got a good profile. I mean, you know, there's no denying that. They've got Leadership 9, they've got Weapon Skill 5, they're pretty high initiative, especially with their special rules. But then you're taking shields on them most likely, so they're up to like 14 points. And I'm just not sure they do a better job, really. I mean, they obviously do a better job, but I'm not sure they do a much better job in the army than just a basic unit of like Elven Militia with spears would do for, 30-odd% cheaper. So, and I don't think you're generally wanting, well, maybe this is not totally true, but like if sort of anvil unit, they're just very expensive for performing that function, because the problem with them being only a 5-up save, only toughness 3, and only strength 3, I just think isn't a great combination for the cost of a fairly elite unit of infantry, which is what they end up being, especially if you take the shields.
Yeah, I do agree with you that they need some like love within the route. Like, I think if they get done again, I think the spears need an additional strength. Is my feeling on it. I because they're a bit of an anvil unit, like stubborn is great for that. But I
do agree with that.
It's hard to argue with stubborn, but and I do slightly agree with you. The shields and light armor going only to a 5-up, but I don't think I'd like to see that changed. One thing that I do think though is, say, like against, and we see lots of dwarves, but if you think about playing like a range of armies rather than just like, say, you played my Chaos Warriors a fair few times, and they're toughness 4, so then you think about terms in terms of toughness 4.
Yeah.
But when you're fighting strength toughness 3 opponents, and you strike in first, and you can have like a 7 wide front rank, so that's you getting 15 attacks, 15 with the champion. Like you're hitting on 3s, wounded on 4s at AP -1, and you're pretty much definitely going first, or at least simultaneously when they charge you, but you'll likely charge as well, and you're fighting extra rank. Although it doesn't work on the charge, I suppose, you're still getting 8 attacks with a 7 wide front rank. I think you're doing enough damage against toughness 3 opponents to at least mitigate a lot of the incoming, and that's where
that's fair.
Your anviliness comes in. I think it starts to fail when you're playing against a load of toughness 4 opponents, and definitely is just completely gone when you toughness 5, because wounding on 6s isn't good enough. The stubborn, I think it can, with you saying at the start of the video, they struggle to hold that central objective. If you only need that turn to hold it at the end of the game, having you yourself holding it and your opponent not is effectively with like a 200-point watchtower, do you know, in the central objective, is effectively like a 400-point swing.
Oh yeah.
So having a 250-point unit of Eternal Guard that's not going to go anywhere when you jump onto it last turn with Drilled, I think is a fairly good usage. And if we start seeing like tournament packs from Games Workshop, and they've got stuff like table quarters or things like that, or things with more objectives in, I definitely think they've got a place within the list.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. I do have some, and so I'll keep using them. I don't completely hate them. I think it's like, and I like the concept and the lore of them as well. I think it's a shame that there isn't in the Wood Elf list just basic spearmen. I don't see why they all have to be archers.
Yeah.
Because Eternal Guard are a proper elite, like guard the forest over the winter type.
Yeah.
Which I really like, but I think it's a shame you can't just take spears.
Yeah, it's like everyone being a Phalanx Warder in the Imperial Fists.
Yeah, but that's just Imperial Fist players.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, it's like, does everyone... literally everyone that's a spearman is an Eternal Guard spearman?
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of thing.
Exactly. Not everyone is on the Phalanx.
Yeah, exactly. To use the best analogy. I tried to veer away from mentioning heresy, but it was the best one I could think of. So, let's go on to the next unit. Let's go on to Wildwood Rangers. Now, these are 14 points a model. These are another combat infantry unit. Weapon skill 5.
Basically.
Strength 3, toughness 3, initiative 4, leadership 9. You've got hand weapons, rangers, glaives, which are +2 strength, -2 AP, and 2-handed, but aren't strikes last. So it's essentially a great weapon that doesn't strike last. And you can take shields, so it'll be the same save as Eternal Guard for a point extra, but then you can't use your glaive. You've got Close Order, Elven Reflexes, Guardians of the Wildwood, which is whilst in base contact with an enemy model that causes fear or terror, gain +1 to your attacks and multiple wounds 2, which is absolutely excellent. Immune to psych, move through cover. And I've seen a bit of discussion that these being a close order infantry doesn't make sense, and I think it is a bit of a downside. But I think they have
a downside because it makes them harder to maneuver.
Yeah. Especially when like the immediate choice of target at the moment is like the dragon, the abyssal terror, the like royal Pegasus, that's going to be able to just easily outmaneuver the Wildwood Rangers.
Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and it's just obvious because of the Guardians of the Wildwood rule.
But it's not just for taking on massive monsters.
No, like
so it's helpful against like dragon ogres or
dinosaurs,
right?
I don't fully agree that is like the death of the unit. I actually think it's a really, really good unit. Like great weapons that are striking at initiative 5.
Yeah.
When someone is charging them, and at initiative 8 when they're on the charge.
Yeah.
Is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think they're a good unit. I mean, you could argue that they're overshadowed by some of the other hard-hitting units, and I think that might be true. They have got a slightly different application, though, with the Strength 5. Just a base Strength 5 turn after turn is quite different than some of the other units. So I'm not going to say they're the best unit in the army list, but I think they've got their place, and you don't have, again, I would see these, they're not, again, there to rack up static combat race. So you can have some, like, quite wide but small units dotted around.
Well, you could have them, again, like the Glade Guard, in units of 5. And you could
you could, absolutely.
And you could take lots of units of 5.
I think it would feel a little less gamey with the Wildwood Rangers than it would with the Glade Guard. And I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. Like I quite rate the unit. Like I say, I'm not sure they're necessarily going to be appearing in all like the tournament winning lists. I don't know, but I do think they've got scope. Yeah, they are, to be honest, going to struggle against the dragon. I mean, even with the Guardians of the Wildwood, they're still only strength 5, so they're wounding on 5s. They're going to die, a lot of them. So they're potentially you might not get many attacks. If you get charged, you're not going to get loads of attacks against the dragon. But if you do get some, then, don't take a champion, because obviously then the dragon rider will just challenge him.
Yeah, well, you can just refuse the challenge as well.
I suppose that's true, yeah.
It's one of them things. I think they've got a place. They're quite a fun unit. They're different. I think the AP -2 +2 strength, as you say, you don't have to pick AP -2 or another attack like you do on the War Dancers.
Nope.
That then he's sort of competing in their hybrid role. These are just doing
and
it all the time.
You're better against high toughness as well, with your +2 strength, which not everything is. So I like them. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. So skipping out War Dancers, let's go to Way Watchers. And at 16 points a model, movement 5, BS 5 is the key, initiative 5, and leadership 8. Your archers again, and essentially have Elven reflexes, evasive, feigned flight, fire and flee, ignores cover, move through cover, scouts and skirmishers, and can take ambushes, vanguard, or veterans. And veterans.
Oh, we've established they're not going to be taking ambushes.
Yeah. Goes without saying, I think, that one.
I mean, we've sort of covered a lot of what you do, I think, with the Way Watchers when we were looking at the Way Stalker. And they are, obviously, the BS5 is excellent. Beyond that, how much better than Deepwood Scouts they are, I'm unsure.
Because it's 2 points more a model for an additional ballistic skill.
Plus 85 points for a Way Stalker.
Yeah. No. And that's the question, isn't it? Rather than breaking down another bow unit, it's maybe just going to have to be left to everyone that's listening. Like, we've already been through the Way Stalker, and we've been through these units. I think it is probably worth it on the base cost of the Way Watchers, but it's whether or not
for ignores cover and another ballistic skill. Yeah, I would say it is.
But the tax of the character and where they come in the list is, I think, something that's just going to have to be decided by what you as a player personally feel. Yeah. Rather than sort of like flogging a dead horse with like, let's pick the same arrows. It's a skirmishing unit with fire and flee again. Yeah. So then, Dryads and Treekin. Now, again, forest spirits. 13 points a model on the Dryad with 2 attacks. And you've got weapon skill. You've got weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, strength 3, which has gone down in the old world, which is a shame. Toughness 4, initiative 4, 2 attacks, as I just said, leadership 8. An additional attack on the champion, so 1 more than the branch wraith. Got light armor. The nymph can take forest spirits with 25 points, but you can't do multiples in the list, as Phil said before. So most of those good ones are going to be used on your characters. You've got fear, flammable, magical attacks, open order, regeneration 6, skirmishers, which I think is going to be the one that I would be recommending to use, stubborn, and tree spirit, so you can't be joined by anything but a branch wraith or a Treemen ancient. Although you can't be joined by an ancient because he's a Behemoth. It's just a branch wraith.
Just the Behemoth, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, Dryads have been heavily nerfed compared to their disgusting sort of state in 6th edition. So that's probably good, but like they aren't. I don't think they've come out the best in this. There are, they're not awful. I mean, obviously they've got quite like 2 attacks each is obviously very good. Toughness 4 is good. They're only strength 3. They don't have any AP or any armor bane. I don't know. I mean, they're not. There's a place for a unit of them, particularly with stubborn. I guess you can hold something up. You can have this nice cloud of skirmishing stubborn stuff that can block things, take a charge, fall back, and then you can countercharge with whatever you know. I guess that's a fairly obvious trap for someone to fall into, maybe, but they're not awful. I just think they're not the best. And if you want them as that kind of anvil, I think they're outclassed by the Treekin in that.
Right, so let's get into Treekin then. So Treekin, basically an ogre with toughness 5 and a leadership 8 instead of 7. I think it's the easiest way to say. So that's 4s across the board. Oh, and it's 1 movement less and movement 5. Yeah, 4s across the board, 3 wounds, 3 attacks. You've got heavy armor as standard. Your champion has +1 attack. And again, it's forest sprites, but you gain tree whack and an additional regeneration.
And a stomp attack.
Oh, and a stomp attack, yeah.
So, like, obviously 51 points a model, quite expensive. But I think you're getting really quite a lot. Like, toughness 5 is a big jump from toughness 4 for me.
Yeah.
Just in survivability, you've got your 5-up armor save, which, okay, maybe you're going to find is you're not getting that many. Like, you're going to face quite a lot of AP1, I guess. Are you? Probably, yeah. But I do like them as an anvil, and you're getting a lot of attacks because they've obviously got 3 attacks each plus their stomps. So they've got to survive to initiative 1 to make the stomp. Yeah. They've also got magical attacks, which might be helpful. And Armor Bane 2.
I don't think they've got enough attacks to really capitalise on the Armor Bane 2.
No, it'd be better. Well, they would be better if they just had AP1, without doubt. That would be considerably better. I'm not saying they should, but like the Armor Bane 2 is nice, but you wouldn't want to rely on that.
No, it's one of them rules that I never particularly ever like. Like, even like in each, like, shooting units that aren't, I think the only way to do it really is massive shooting unit with an Armor Bane 2. For a combat unit, I never find a front rank wide enough. By which I mean shooting units because of volley fire and things like that. So you can really pack in the attacks. Combat units I never find you can really get them off that much with the Armor Bane. Yeah, I think like even unit size of 2, it's another small unit that for 100 points with stubborn can be a really effective speed bump.
Yeah.
And it can put out that bit of hurt on the toughness 4 opponents that don't have too high of an armor save.
Yep. Yeah. No, I like Treekin. They're my choice as a sort of anvil, so I would go with Treekin rather than Eternal Guard or Dryads.
Yeah. So
not really aesthetic. I do think.
I don't think they're the best models. I think is.
Oh, I've not got official ones because those models are dreadful.
No, they are. I've seen some people convert them to look really nice. I'm not a massive fan of the base Games Workshop models.
No.
So next, shall we go on to cavalry?
Yes.
So the True Flight arrows, I think, real good choice for the pairing with Fire and Flee to get the shots from any range. And I don't think the actual total damage of Glade Riders needs to be that high for them to be super, super useful. They tie really well into, when you were saying last time at the very start of the first video about them playing differently to a lot of armies, they're such a good keep away unit, especially in skirmish formation with that Fire and Flee, to be able to just get out of there at full speed at any point.
Yeah.
I think it ties really well into that.
It does. And so here's a question. What about the other rules you can take? So because 0 to 1 per 1,000 points, so that's actually going to be 1 per 1,000 points, is going to take at least one of these rules.
So I think ambushes, I don't like.
No.
Drilled to potentially move 27 inches a turn, I think is a real good option. Because just going into a marching column and moving 27 inches across the board can be an incredibly powerful thing to do. Especially because then, I believe I'm correct in saying this, you can 90-degree turn at the end of that as well and get yourself out of dodge a little bit more. Yeah. The reserve move, incredibly good in that if you move your 9 and then have all of... I think reserve move is really good in armies with a lot of shooting. In that you can move right up to something, shoot a hole in, say, a unit of skirmishers, or in a single line of a unit, and then move through it with reserve move at the end of your shooting phase. And that ties right into how Wood Elves are going to be very shooting predominant and give you those gaps in your opposing force. So they're the two standouts of that list, I think. The Magic Standard, I don't think it's the best choice here.
No, you can get more Glade Riders instead, and that's probably going to be better than whatever Magic Standard. I can't think of a Magic Standard that would obviously be worth the points on this unit. I mean, obviously you could use the Ignore to cover one, but that's just going to be better on a big unit of Glade cards, surely.
Yeah, when you're getting the more models benefit from it.
You're getting more shots per point if we're looking at it in terms of efficiency. And so I think that's... And the one... There are a couple of... Like, I think having cavalry spears is good. Not that I'd be putting these into combat very often, but you've got that. If you get a sort of weak enough target, you can charge it, and you've got that extra strength on the charge to help you kill something. You've got to either be convinced it's weak enough to just be wiped by what isn't that potent a unit, or be desperate, obviously. But it's still it's good that they've got that, and they're not just got the bows.
No, well, it's a point upgrade per rider that's already included in the cost. I think is the way of looking at it, and it makes you strength 4 with AP -1. So against something like an artillery crew, or charging into the rear of a short, like a single line of shooting troops, where you're not going to get standard shot against, is actually quite likely to break them.
Yeah, especially if you're getting the +2 with the rear charge and all that. Now they don't have move through cover. One of the very few units in the book that don't have move through cover. I
think we can maybe forgive them for that at movement 9. I know there's others with move through cover at movement 9.
It's just one of those. I don't think it really matters to them for that reason, especially as you're not probably going to be charging, so you're not too worried about the effect it has on your charge distance.
Yeah. Now, I know how I would go with the command type, but I don't want to influence your decision. How would you be going with the unit command?
I mean, I wouldn't give them a standard.
Yes.
Because they're just too likely to get wiped and give away points, and it doesn't do much for them. So, no standard. Musician, if I can afford it, yes, because they're going to be running away from stuff.
Yeah.
So the help with rallying is what I'm after there. Champion, I mean, maybe. It's +1 BS. I find I often forget that. When I've got a small unit of archers with one champion in, I find him I remember after I've rolled the dice to hit. And so if you're more clued up on your army than I am, or you're better at remembering, then maybe it's worth it. But I think, you're just setting yourself up to forget that with me. But if you practice enough with the army and you're taking, it's obviously an improvement, BS5. Is it worth 6 points? Maybe, could be. It's not a terrible choice.
Now, I'm with you, I think, on this. Is the musician is the one that I would go for first, and I'd say at 6 points is a pretty auto-include. Standard,
really
for the same reason that I don't do it in my chaos. You just don't want to give away 6 points, as you said.
No.
The champion. Now, in other armies, the champions of fast cav units sometimes come with a leadership boost, as well as the 2 attacks. Even though they're a shooting unit predominantly, I'd almost prefer a second attack to a ballistic skill on these, because
I agree.
Yeah, because it then at least gives you that additional punch with your cavalry spear when you want to do in a war machine crew.
Exactly, and you want to do them in one turn.
Yeah,
on the charge. Yeah, exactly. And if they're a tough crew like dwarfs, obviously, there is a realistic chance if you don't do that, you might lose the combat the next turn, and then that's bad.
Yeah, agreed. Now, that I think is probably quite a good summary of the Glade Riders. I think there's one thing that we've not said, their usefulness, and I think it ties into the next unit that we're going to be looking at, is 5 of them that you can put in front of your Wild Riders and keep pace
100%.
with the Wild Riders is going to be a use for these, and that'll become obvious as we start talking about Wild Riders. So if you're following along at home, bear that in mind as we start going through. And I'd equip them the same as I would any other Glade Rider unit, but let's go on to the Wild Riders.
Definitely.
Let's go on to Wild Riders rather than Sisters of the Thorn, which I've just skipped.
It doesn't make much difference. We can skip back to
So
Sisters of the Thorn.
Wild Riders, weapon skill 5. They've got strength 4, toughness 3, initiative 5, 6 with elven reflexes. They've got 1 attack, leadership 9, but on the attacks, they've got frenzy, furious charge, so will be 3 attacks on the charge. But the frenzy will be forcing them to charge, as is the frenzy rule, whenever they can make a legal charge. So they don't have to declare it if they can see, but wouldn't be able to charge by being blocked off. Because I checked it over this weekend. I thought they had to declare it and just hit the bag. But no. So having a unit of Glade Riders in front of them will prevent them having to make that charge. But then if you actually do want to, you can charge your Glade Riders at something, even if it's a charge that they don't end up making. You can charge like a max charge distance all the way in one direction that you know they're going to fail, knowing that they'll just fire and flee in the next turn, and now your Wild Riders have the potential for making a charge forwards into the unit that you actually want the Wild Riders to go into. Yeah.
And I would say that's a good case potentially for taking your Glade Riders as skirmishers.
Yeah. To be able to charge. Because then you've got
that 360. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Which you don't necessarily have to do that, right? That you could still do this with them just as fast cab, but I think it's going to be easier to actually like maneuver, because otherwise that could be a quite annoying sort of intricate maneuver that you've got to do with the Glade Riders, and then ensure they've got a charge target that they then can go off and chase without sort of either blocking the Wild Riders or having to charge into the same target and giving away combat res and stopping Wild Riders being in base to base, which would be terrible because obviously they've got loads of attacks, as we just discussed.
Yeah.
So there are some other things in the list that can do that same job, which we'll come to, but the Glade Riders are excellent for it.
Yeah. So at 27 points a model, I think these are a bit of a steal for how fast they are, how hard hitting they are. And although they've not got the best armor, right? Being a 6-up, but talismanic tattoos.
5 up with a shield if you take shields. You can obviously take shields on them for a point. Well, yes, because I play WYSIWYG and mine have shields.
I'd definitely take a shield. 5 up save versus a 6-up save.
Yeah.
I mean,
for what is a 27-point model, There's enough low strength shooting that's going to want to. Well, everything's going to want to shoot the Wild Riders.
Yeah, they're not a unit in the list that won't want to take these down before they make contact.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So here is actually where I would start thinking the full command is worth it, even though it's a fast unit. This is the shock cavalry rather than like a true fast cavalry in thought.
These are you're probably your heaviest hitting unit, maybe outside of a dragon.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. Like the hunting spears being +1 strength, -2 AP with armor being 1, I think is absolutely excellent. Although it's not as good as a full lance, being only strength +1, you're still hitting as hard as, say, like a Bretonnian Knight of the Realm, because you've
Yeah,
got the strength
exactly.
4.
Yeah.
And with triple
You've
the
also got,
attacks.
yeah, really nasty. And you've got a strength 4 steed.
Yeah, because you're on a deer, aren't you?
So, a strength 4, initiative 4 steed. Pretty good.
Yeah. So the magic standards, I think I can probably give it a guess here. The standard that causes fear to move to terror,
Yeah.
is what I would be thinking on the Wild Riders.
Or the whatever the other one's called, the King?
The which one, sorry?
Banner of the Hunter King, 25 points to give them Vanguard.
Ooh. Yeah, so being movement 9, being able to then move their 9 and declare up to 18 inches away in the first turn. So effectively 27 away from your deployment zone on the first turn. It just pushes the enemy that much further back. When you want to stand close further back into your deployment zone and have people walk at you a lot of the time, as wood elves, forcing them back on the first turn so they don't get just speared by some Wild Riders. Very effective.
Definitely. Yeah.
And a potential cause of massive rage and toys out of prams.
Yeah. The first time it happens to someone. Definitely. I mean, they're not, yeah, they're not a unit that can be ignored. That's the thing, is they are obviously going to get shot. So you need to screen them for more than one reason, I think. Or you're getting them, obviously, maybe not if you're vanguarding them and then turn 1 charging. You're probably not too worried. But again, you've got move through cover, so you can also use the wood that you place here. Potentially. Obviously, you can't put it near the centre of the table, so you'd have to look at the deployment zone. But that's where you can place that wood as like a staging post. You vanguard up behind it or into it.
Well, I think even having the banner, because the first thing any opponent of Wood Elves should be doing is like, have you got the Vanguard banner on some Wild Riders? And you as the Wood Elf player go, yeah, I have. And my second unit down is directly opposite your good unit, the Wild Riders. Even if you don't then use that to charge off, because then they...
Yeah.
Even if you then just use that as a mind game to force your opponent back, it's been worth that 25 points to get you that extra turn, couple of turns of them walking at you across the board.
Definitely. Yep.
And just playing that sort of mind game versus, like, you'd have to be weighed up against the terror, obviously, but you can have a BSB noble with the banner that will make you step up into terror, so it's not even having to be a choice between the two. Yeah.
No, it's not. So here's a question: would you take more than 1 unit?
It depends what game you want to play, I suppose. If you want to be going, I think these multiple list build options with Wood Elves is one of the things. I don't think they're one of the armies that are stuck into more of a like definite one way of playing.
I agree.
I think you can do either. So why get 2 units and then some games use 1, some games use 2? Like, I think they're good enough to justify the 2. I don't think
they are. Yeah.
And
I mean, I do think there's a lot of competition in the special section for Wood Elves, because you've got Wild Riders, you've got War Dancers, you've got another unit that we're going to talk about, Sisters of the Thorn.
Yeah, I think even with like 7 of them is approximately 170 points. 180 almost with the shields, full command, 200. 200 isn't that much of your special allowance.
No, that's true.
I think
that's true.
They're cheap. They're actually cheap, and although they can be, and I'm saying 7 because that's 5 being like, well, the boxes come in fives, and lots of people take cavalry in fives. So I quite like to have one either side of my opponent. And we've seen wider units in general in the game. Like I run all my Marauder Cav in sevens, including a hero, and I'd say 90% of the time I'm getting attacks from each of them. So just ensuring that you're going to win that combat.
Yes, and they do need to ensure that.
Yeah.
They do really need to ensure that.
Yeah, as soon as it comes to like being stuck around, although you are fast, if you start dropping elves, you're gonna, it's a big hit every single time you lose one.
Well, yeah, and also, although you are obviously they've got a decent profile with weapon skill 5 and strength 4, that's above average and a high initiative, but they're not going to be chewing. Like if you charge them into a unit of knights, for example, or anything heavily armed, really, you've probably got to drop it in one turn and make it run away. Otherwise, you're going to have some real problems.
Yeah, well, I think that's where the fear to terror banner comes in, with the -1 to the leadership on the break test.
Yeah,
it's just so helpful regardless of combat res.
So, what do you think about a magic item on the champion?
50 points.
25.
The magic.
25.
Oh, 25. Yeah. Just one sec. So, I just asked Phil off camera because I was having a second to think about it, and they were none of the weapons. I'm not a massive fan of, as I think anyone that's watched the first part of this guide, of many magical weapons across any of the armies. Ogre blades are out because they're 65 points, so I wouldn't be choosing any magic weapons. Now, Phil, you agreed with that. What would you be choosing?
I think I'd think about a Paymaster's Coin. Because he's got 4 attacks when he charges. Yeah. And you just want to break for the turn where you charge into something and you've got to break it and you're a bit worried about that. I think the rerolls might be worth it.
Yeah, and it's like sort of the value of that reroll. You've got the same number of attacks as a Lord, so you're not getting any less value. I know a Lord can come with an Ogre Blade, but you're not getting any less value attacks wise as with anyone else basically in the list anyway, unless they're on a monstrous mount. So,
yeah, so that's the one I think is a good shout. I'm not saying it's still quite a lot of points to put on a champion, and I to be honest think at the start of building a list, I'll include these things, and then I find I don't have enough points for the sort of nice little extras like that. But I do think it's worth some consideration. I can't think of another instance in this army or probably any of the others I've got where I'd be really thinking, some magic item on a champion. But that would probably be the one.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good shout because it's just ensuring that shock cavalry value of them by getting more combat res, making yourself more likely to be outnumbering your opponent, so causing a Verbigo to turn into a break.
Yeah,
I think all of it worthwhile and the investment into this unit. Like on the numbers of units, if you've got 1 or 2 of these units, especially if you've got 1, it's likely going to be something that you need to deal with a really important threat that you can't take out in any other way.
That's
so having
it. I do agree with that.
25 points worth of magic items isn't misplaced.
No.
If it ensures that
because I've already said I like War Dancers, but I think there are some things War Dancers can't deal with that you'd want to put your Wild Riders into. They've got higher strength and better AP, basically. And they've still got a lot of attacks, not as many attacks. But
yeah. And even though they've not got the Always Strikes First, being movement 9 means that your initiative of 5 with Elven Reflexes 6 is going to be 9 when you charge in a lot of the time. And with counter charge as well, you're a lot of the time getting that. So even though you're missing the Always Strikes First of the War Dancers, you're likely going to always strike first anyway, When, like
Yeah,
regardless of the rules.
yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're not striking first, you're going to lose the combat for other reasons as well, probably.
Yeah.
Like you've not been able to countercharge. Well, that's striking first isn't going to save you probably there.
Yeah, and it ties into the main army sort of like thoughts that we had at the start, is that when you have got caught out with these, it's likely going to have been a mistake on your own part. Phil's nodded, so when I catch him out on this, I'm going to feel real smug that we both know that it's Phil's fault.
Oh, yeah. Definitely user error. And they are a bit unforgiving, aren't they? Because they're not heavily armoured, they're not tough, and they've got frenzy, so yes, they can be baited. Yeah, I think all that's good. I mean, I think that's like, otherwise they'd be either a lot more expensive or too strong.
Yeah, because they're hitting not quite as hard as Chaos Knights, but almost. More attacks, less strength. And likely that's enough to be as hard hitting as Chosen Chaos Knights, I mean, rather than just Chaos Knights. So it's
nearly hard hitting the normal Chaos Knights,
Yeah, so it's that level of unit that we're talking about. So if they did have a 2-up save with all of those attacks, it shudders to think about it. Well, shall we move on to Sisters of the Thorn?
Let's do that.
Now, 24 points a model, so less than a Wild Rider. They've got Weapon Skill 4, BS 5, Strength Toughness 3, 1 attack, I don't know why I'm bothering saying it. Initiative 4, 1 wound, I didn't know why I was bothering saying it. 1 attack. Leadership 9. The champion has got an extra ballistic skill and extra attack for 8 points. And the special thing here... Oh, I'm going to say the special thing. The main special thing is that they are basically a unit of spellcasters, and that manifests itself in the form of a bound spell. So if the unit includes a champion, it's a bound level 1. If there's a champion and a standard bearer, level 2. And otherwise it's a level 0. The other special thing is that you've got a 12-inch range throwing or a javelin that strength user, AP -1, move and shoot, quick shot, and I believe you've got poisoned. Yeah, you do, because you've got poisoned type special rule, and that applies both combat and not.
And to your steed when you're in combat.
Yeah,
yes, that's how the rules work.
Yeah, and you've also got a 4-up ward against any wounds suffered, magical or otherwise, which is incredibly good.
Amazingly good,
yeah.
Superb.
Yeah, but I would say it's the magic spell. So you're picking a spell, and that's off elementalism or battle magic. And do you know what? I'd be tempted to go battle magic. At power level 2, battle magic tends to have less high casting values. So it will allow you to get more spells off than elementalism, I would say. Is my thoughts on that.
So what spell would you pick from battle magic?
Do you know what? I would be incredibly boring, and I'd be taking like Fireball or something. Just for consistent damage, you already want to be doing output, and it's something that you can skirt enemy wizards on. I don't think you want to be... And I can see myself getting contradicted immediately and being told to get back in my lane. But yeah, I just think you want to increase the damage output of the Sisters of the Thorn and just being a constant annoying thorn in the side.
See what you did there? No, I think that's a good idea. I mean, Fireball's a great spell, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's low casting value, 2d6 strength 4s, massively increase the output of the unit. And I'm trying to rack my brain. I don't think you can fit a Ruby Ring of Ruin in that 25 points.
No, it's 30.
Yeah, so it's if you
disappointing that I know that off by heart.
Well, he's almost like Wood Elf players like Ruby Ring of Ruins. Don't we all? Don't we all?
We do.
But
we do all like it when we've got it.
What would your pick be for spell?
So, no, I mean, I think Fireball would be a good pick. I think Plague of Rust is also a good pick from Elementalism.
Yeah, because it'll stack nicely with like Arcane Bodkins, and also the natural -1 AP of the javelins that the own sisters
and the poisoned attacks.
Yeah,
and the poisoned attacks. So a lot of your army's going to benefit from getting Plague of Rust off on stuff. I mean, you could look at Curse of Arrow Attraction from Battle Magic, but I think Fireball's a better option there. So probably one of those two, because Plague of Rust's casting value is 9, so it's a bit dicey that you're going to get that off when you've got. Because I mean, obviously you're taking the champion and the standard bearer. I mean, obviously you must have to do that. I think that's it's a complete no-brainer.
Yeah, and with Fire and Flee, I'd be taking a musician as well, because I think one of the reason that I'd favour Fireball, like personally, like looking at the unit, I know I'm not going to be playing it often, but what you sort of want to be doing with this unit, I think, is skirting around the outskirts of an army, because you're bound to. If you were getting close to the centre, you're going to be more likely to be within range of a level 4 wizard that is just going to shut you down every time.
Definitely.
So forcing enemy wizards either out to the flanks to shut you down, where you can then hit them with your own level 4 that's round the other side, I think is an option. Use them in that way, or just to harass the enemy flanks and take out other light cav units, and then you can envelop much easier.
And then again, they're not actually bad in combat. Like, they've got weapon skill 4, poisoned attacks, so not terrible, and a strength 4 steed as well. Again,
yeah. I think there's something that can be counted on to destroy an opposing. If you get the charge, this light cav unit, I think you can count on it to probably kill another light cav unit. And
I think so.
Yeah, the 4 at ward mitigates a lot of the literally half of the incoming damage. So
and I think they're really cheap for what they do.
24 points is absolutely nothing.
Because I mean, they're effectively a more resilient level 2 wizard. Obviously they only know one spell, but you can pick it, so that's really good. And they've got a 4 up ward, which how many wizards, certainly level 2 wizards, that have a 4 up ward or 4 up save all the time? I mean, very few.
But the only unit
they're incredibly mobile
that has a 4 up ward. Like all the other actual units with wards included have either 5 ups or 6 ups. And at the 5 up level, we're talking Chosen Chaos Knights, which I know they're just an entirely different beast, but are double the points of this.
Yeah.
And he's I can't think of anything that comes with a 4 up ward, really.
No, I mean, I don't have any Sisters of the Thorn, so that's annoying. I would say they're. I don't know if you can say what's the best unit in an army, but I don't see a better one in this army list.
Oh, really?
But no, not for the overall utility and the points cost. I don't think so.
You see, I think,
and you can take more than one. Take a unit. Take a unit with Plague of Rust. Take a unit with Fireball. Why not?
Yeah, like it's hard to. I think you sort of nail on the head with it. I don't know whether you can say what fits in nicely, because my instinct would be like Wild Riders or something like that, but they have their own intrinsic downsides. But I think the standout things are going to be what you need to worry about. Shooting. You see lots of shooting in a Wood Elf list. How are you going to do that? These come into it with their poison attacks at AP -1. Their ability to bait your enemy, as well as adding to your magic. And then you're going to have to think about counter charges. Wild Riders really fulfill that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I will just add another plug to Plague of Rust, just because you can cast it into combat as well. So if you, I think that's a big point in its favour.
Phil is not accepting any money off Plague of Rust.
Well, I don't have a unit, so I've not used them yet.
No,
so
I think it's just going to be how confident people feel in their ability to roll double sixes or whatever, so that they don't get their spells shut down by enemy level 4s.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah.
And in addition to pre-measure, your ability to stay outside, especially with a fast cav unit, of your enemy's 24-inch like shutdown bubble, is much higher,
Big.
obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. With a 21-inch range spell for Plague of Rust, so you've got some room for manoeuvre to do that.
Yeah.
But Fireball obviously has got an excellent range as well. So both of those, for those reasons, very good picks.
Yeah.
I need to get some Sisters of the Thorn.
There we go. Well, that's it. If you were thinking like, oh, in this edition I need to get some of this unit, it's probably one worth recommending.
Yeah.
Next, we've got the Warhawk Riders, and these are 44 points each for a weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, toughness 4, strength 3, 2 wounds, initiative 4, 1 attack, leadership 8, rider, and then a weapon skill 3, strength 4 with 2 attacks mount. That's also initiative 4. Yeah, you've got cavalry spears, so the rider will be strength 4 on the charge. The Warhawk remains strength 4 because they don't have cavalry spears. And you've got Asari longbows on the riders. Wicked Claws on the mounts, AP -2, which is really good.
Very good.
AP -2 is it's like the highest cap of any normal weapon. I mean, a cannon is -2, so it's definitely nothing to be sniffed at. Now,
I've got some Warhawks, and their claws don't look like they should have the same AP as a cannonball, but be that as it may.
I don't think many things should have the armor-piercing characteristic of a cannonball, to be honest.
Not really, no.
It's maybe something Wood Elf players can agree on, in that they don't care about armor saves getting ignored anyway because they don't have any. So we might not be offending anyone in this guide by saying that cannonballs should have a lot higher AP.
They should.
Now,
I'm also a dwarf player, right? So, you know.
Boo! I'm going to boo you now.
So I'm still bitter.
Now, you've got Feigned Flight, so you automatically regroup if you flee here.
Good.
You've got Fire and Flee, Fly 10, Skirmishers and Swift Stride.
And evasive.
And evasive, yeah. So if you get shot at, you can fall back in good order. Now, I have actually heard some bad talk about Warhawk Riders, in that they are so expensive. But although you've got double the wounds, and I think there's a place for them, but it's that they're double the expense of pretty much any of the cavalry units.
Yeah.
I mean, you can almost get to Wild Riders or Sisters of the Thorn for the same price. What I do think they allow you to do is bypass opposing units, and yes, you can do that with Giant Eagles, but Giant Eagles don't have the unit strength to auto break things, whereas a unit of Warhawk Riders can have combined unit strength high enough to auto break smaller skirmish units and things like that. So I do think there's a place for them
about that.
And that in itself will allow you to envelop enemy armies, which is something you might be wanting to do with your fast cav.
Definitely, yeah.
And then cause the enemy army to have to stop and deal with your fast cav, whilst your constant rain of arrows is hammering down. That being said, what are your thoughts on them, Phil? Because you spent more time thinking about it than me.
Yeah, I've got some Warhawk Riders. I really love the models. We've obviously already said Warhawks are amazing as character mounts, yes. Which they are. I basically agree with the criticism that you've just mentioned, because I think it's not that they're bad units. They're not. It's like, obviously, all of those they've got a lot of good rules. That kind of work well together. They are performing a role that you want in the army, I think. It's just that there are other things that can do it cheaper or in your core slot. So, are they actually going to be much better for you than equivalent points in Glade Riders? I think probably not. And that's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem. Like, yeah, they've been pointed because they get 2 wounds, which is obviously better. But, you could just take 2.5 Glade Riders per Warhawk rider.
Yeah.
Something. It's roughly that. And maybe not quite 2.5. But that would be better for you, I think. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think you're really handicapping yourself massively by taking them.
No,
because you're probably only taking a unit of 3 or 4, so it's not a huge points thing. But yeah, if you're really looking at what is the best in each category for the role they're performing, I don't think they are the best considering how many points they cost.
Yeah, well,
and obviously, if your opponent's a Bretonnian and brings the Falcon Horn, then you really don't want them.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things that you probably hit the nail on the head with. It is that they've maybe not got a place in an absolutely optimal army, but they're not bad at what they're doing. Is I think the right way of phrasing it, because I think there's a tendency to be like, they aren't the most optimal, therefore they are crap. It's the way that is a lot of things are expressed. Agreed. And I don't think that's the case here. I think they've definitely got a place. It's just not in the most optimal place that they can be. And I don't think Wood Elves are in a bad spot, so I don't think you have to worry about... They've got a clear function. And I think things with like hybrid functions tend to struggle a little bit. Maybe not like bow-armed fast cav that are also good in combat, but they've got a role and they know what they want to do. It's just a role that also overlaps with other things in the list
that are cheaper or more efficient at it.
Yeah. But
so they're paying points. Sorry, as you say, they're paying points for like their combat output that's higher. But that you're not really looking at them for that. It makes them a bit better at defeating another skirmish unit, but that's probably not the best use of your points. But having said all that, I've got some of the old metal ones, which I think are really nice, so I will be using some. The other thing is, like, if you're putting a character on a Warhawk, it gives you the option of joining the character to that unit. And you might not feel the need to do that because, as we said earlier with the Warhawk, you can still hide near cavalry, even just like normal cavalry, but you can't join them because you're monstrous and they're not. Whereas you can join the unit of Warhawk Riders because obviously you're the same. So that's a consideration, I think. It gives you that option of joining your mage or maybe your like blade captain if you're putting a fightier character on a Warhawk.
Yeah, agreed. Like, one of the things that, and this is game design more than anything, I would have liked to see a full command able to be
cool.
put on the Warhawk Riders just for shits and gigs. Though I suppose the banner is a bit of a Bretonnian special on the Pegasus Knights, but certainly a musician or something and that's not even game commentary. That is just, I quite like seeing commands on.
They look good. They look nice.
Units. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And you've obviously got the normal arrow options. I don't think I wouldn't spend too long thinking about it on this unit. Because I'm not expecting huge output because there's only probably 3 or 4 of them. So
yeah, but it's per model as well. I don't see any in it. Like, we've sort of glossed over it on a lot of them because it's the commentary is the same for every single unit, and I don't think there's, between the ones that we've mentioned that are good, other than the True Flight arrows, which I think Glade Riders, or you've mentioned, or the Glade Riders specifically, might specifically benefit. I suppose they would on the Warhawk Riders, but other than that change between fast or like cavalry and infantry, the choice remains the same, and I don't think you can make a bad choice between Arcane Bodkins, Hagbane Tips, and True Flight.
Yeah, don't bother with Moonfire.
Yeah, essentially. Unless I suppose you're playing relentless vampire counts.
Yeah, then do.
Then do. And it's, again, a binary choice. So next we go on to Great Eagles. These are 60 points. And we sort of said they were crap as a character mount. But on their own, weapon skill 5, strength toughness 4, 3 wounds, initiative 4, 3 attacks, leadership 6, so rubbish, but you're not going to be using it that often, I don't think. You've got Wicked Claws, which are -2 AP. You've got a Serrated Maw, which is Armor Bane 2, multiple wounds 2, and you've got to use one of your 3 attacks on that. Fear, Fly 10, Stomp attacks 1, Swift Stride in Close Order. I think they're really good.
Yeah, they're the same as the Great Eagle in the High Elf army as well, I think, which isn't for as long as I can remember being a staple of High Elf armies.
Yeah.
Very good, I think. Yeah, I mean, cheap, 60 points.
Yeah.
Really cheap. You're not under any pressure in your rare slot either, I don't think, for this army, unless you're running many Treemen, I suppose. But 60 points is not nothing, but it's really cheap for that. But for something that can fly, adds close order. So if you're combo charging, that's useful, because like your Wild Riders don't have it, so you're adding that close order as a point of combat res, and you've got more than respectable combat profile. So yeah, excellent at hunting war machines. Good unit to use as a screen for Wild Riders as well.
Oh, to just drop in front of them.
Yeah, because you've got a not 20 inch charge range, but whatever it is, by 10. So
yeah, 19.
19, yeah, with Swift Stride, exactly. So yeah, and I mean, I suppose you've not got that 360 line of sight that you would have with Glade Riders or Warhawk Riders, which you could use for the same purpose.
Well, one thing I think to be said about them, so long as you can see the unit, that you can fly. So say you can drop in front of Wild Riders and then charge something on a hill behind the enemy army
100%
that you want to charge anyway, and use it as a blocking force in that way, and then just unleash your Wild Riders when you want. Yeah. And although you're not a large target, or a behemoth, so you can't see over the enemy army, so long as they're on a hill, you can see them.
Yep.
Because flying obviously is trumped by person on the ground. but not by hill.
No.
Which is crazy, which is absolute craziness.
It's very funny. But these are the abstractions that make the game work. Or something.
I still think if you were flying, someone that's on the ground shouldn't be able to charge you. Unless you want.
You think so?
Yeah,
I guess so. I can see. I mean, it would be tough from a game balance perspective. Have dragons that could only be charged, never be charged unless they wanted to be.
Well, I suppose it happened in 5th, right, where you'd just be like, "Dragon flies high," and then somebody would be like, "Thundering skies" or whatever it was, and you just get these ways of sorting it. I just want the sort of like circling in the sky without being able to be touched. That's what I want. And
so they are excellent, just excellent utility piece to have in the army. Strong case for taking more than one.
Oh, definitely. Like 2 or 3, I don't think is a miss, because at 180 points for 3 of them is the same as a 6 Glade Guard with a few upgrades.
Yeah.
Like, it's nothing really what we're talking about, and the utility of them, as you said, just being able to multi-charge into knight units and throw out a load of attacks at -2s. Can do that into the flanks, the rear, because you're so manoeuvrable.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Really good units.
And with quite a small base size for what he's trying to do as well, the 50 by 50.
Yeah.
Is a really concentrated package of attacks.
That's it. So even if if say you are using them to screen your Wild Riders, you can then put them into the same target, and it might mean you've got 1 or 2 Wild Riders who can't attack. Probably only 1 though. Into most things, I would have thought. And you're replacing it with eagle attacks that are also good.
Yeah, because weapon skill 5 is sort of crazy, man. Like,
Yeah.
for what it is, I know eagles are pretty skilled at being eagles, but weapon skill 5 is high.
What? Why? Yeah. Why is an eagle weapon skill 5 and a warhawk is weapon skill 3? Do warhawks not have to like fight stuff to live? I mean, surely they have to hunt stuff. It's a strange one, and they've got all this blurb about fluff, lore. That's what we're supposed to call it.
Yeah, no, it's blurb now.
About how they're, noble and etc. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not supposed to say that as a wood elf there, but they're obviously very cute. Yeah, I mean, take as many as you can afford, I think.
Yeah, and then I think this is the final entry in the list. We're on to Treemen, which 215 points. Phil, do you want to take us through the stats?
Yeah, movement 5, weapon skill 6, ballistic skill 4, which is relevant, strength 5, toughness 6, 5 wounds, initiative 2, 5 attacks, leadership 9, and then you've got your strength user AP -2 oaken fists, so the same as wicked claws. And you've got a shooting attack, which is the same as for the Treemen Ancient, so 12-inch range, strength user, so strength 5, AP -1, multiple shots, D6 +1. So a pretty good shooting attack. And then lots of other rules. So you've got Armor Bane 1, you've got Close Order, Flammable, Immune to Psychology, Large Target, Magical Attacks, Move Through Cover, Regeneration 5+, D3 Stomp Attacks, Stubborn, Terror, Timber, Tree Spirit, Tree Whack.
Yeah.
It's a lot of rules.
Now,
and you can take 50 points of Forest Bites.
I think they missed a trick that they didn't call the Arboreal Armour Oaken Shield. Because they've got Oaken Fists. Why not have Oaken or at least an upgrade for Oaken Shield? It just would have fit so nicely. Don't bother calling the spell Oaken Shield. Just give the Treemen an Oaken Shield. That's what I want to see. Like, barring all special rules and things like that. I mean, we're at the end of the guide now. Here is the time to waffle. Oaken Shield, that's what I really want. Forget eagles flying high. But
it would be good.
Is there much of a point, do you reckon? If you want to take a Treeman, is there much of a point to be taking the rare slot Treeman over your general being a Treeman Ancient and being a leadership 10 Treeman?
I think they do have a slightly different role, because the Treeman Ancient is obviously more expensive, point 1. And he's considerably less good in combat, because you're getting 2 more attacks here and a higher point of weapon skill. So now, with the Treeman Ancient, if you do what I suggested and take Battle Magic, yeah, then you've got Hammer Hand, probably is what I would, I think, be looking to take as the signature. Then you're not taking Tree Singing, which is a bit annoying. So yeah, and you might have other things that are taking up more of your character allowance, obviously, as well. So whereas the rare slot is only Treemen and Eagles, so you're always going to have that available, I think. And he's quite the Treeman, not Ancient, is quite a lot better in combat. So yeah, that's the reason.
Yeah.
Is the Ancient better than the Treeman? I don't know, because it's just... See, I've not had a chance to use my Treeman yet, so...
Well, I suppose...
and you've got that ability to experiment, because obviously you can take it as both or either. I mean, the Treeman Ancients also got a point higher ballistic skill, which is obviously actually quite useful for their shooting attack.
Yeah. I suppose you can't particularly be locked in a challenge as a Treeman.
No, you can't. No, because you're not a character.
Yeah, which is for putting hurt down onto a unit or not getting just like challenge locked by dwarf slayers. Not that anyone's taking slayers, right? But what joker's taking slayers?
Yeah, or Hammerers.
Yeah.
Or any of these other units that
Blood Knights on a constant res cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got a 50 point Forest Bite allowance. I don't think that there's Befuddlement of Mischiefs is the best one, I think. Because you already cause terror. You can't take some of the other ones. You can't take the one that makes you harder to hit in a challenge because you can't be in a challenge. there aren't that many that are actually useful to you, but that one obviously is because it improves your tree whack. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a place for it as a cheaper, more sort of anvil-y unit, or at least harder, like tougher unit that is also got a decent combat output.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I sort of see in the Treeman is because the tree and the forest spirits in general are slower than most of the rest of your army, even though it is a fair countercharge aspect, that's something that you'll likely already be getting in the form of Wild Riders or War Dancers, but it's something that your opponent can pin down and sort of move towards and have a centre of the army that can be taken out. So I think that's something to be aware of if you start selecting things like Treemen or Treekin, is that it's working against in that way by being like a solid block what a lot of the rest of your army is doing, which is like avoidance of enemy army.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where I think if you're really looking to play the best army, I mean, I'm not the person to tell you what the best army is, but I do think that you're going to have a very clear plan for that. And I don't think that the best Wood Elf army will include a lot of anvil type units. Because, I mean, the Tree Man's obviously he's not just an anvil. There's a lot of strength 5, AP -2 attacks in there, with armor bane as well. So, and he's got stomps. So, actually, compared to, say, the Treekin that are more of an anvil, there's a bit of both there. But yeah, you've got something that your opponent can pin down, and they will probably. They'll see that and move towards it and try and take it out.
To grips with.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that was in the games that I played, or the game that I played against Wood Elves at the weekend. It's something that the rest of the army is, if I move towards it, it will just move away. The Treeman or Treekin, in the case that it was something that I could look at and be like, that can't move away that fast. It gives me a point that I can at least move towards and a function of my army to do.
Yeah.
So it's just something that I thought was worth pointing out from the opposing perspective and a reflection point for any Wood Elf players. That is something to just consider in army composition.
The game is supposed to be fun for both people.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I think it's something that needs to be. Maybe like we come into the closing words, I suppose, because we have gone through all the units in the list. Wood Elves very much have a function of, and have been in previous editions, that some of the best Wood Elf armies are ones that are non-interactive for your opponent.
Yeah.
And it is something to be aware of. Like,
definitely. Depends how many times you want to play your opponent.
Yeah. Well, you can always go to the Throne of Skulls, right? And you'll always get 5 opponents. But will you be a cool dude? And I don't know whether you'll be getting any coolest dude awards for non-interaction lists.
I feel like, and there have been other factions over time that have had an element of non-interaction to them and have usually been pretty strong as a result. And I feel like the design teams have always kind of underestimated how strong that is as a style of play.
Yeah, have you got any closing thoughts other than be a nice person in general?
No, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of variety in the army list, and I do think that's nice. Like, you've got a lot of different ways you can play the army, and that's one of the good things. There's a lot in there that you can, just by making a few changes, have quite a different play style. I think that the best approach, I don't think it's the best approach. The approach I'm going to take is to have more of a balanced. I don't want a pure avoidance army.
Yeah. I think it is a good point as well. Like, it's a good army that there aren't many truly wrong way, or not wrong ways, but there aren't many truly bad ways that you can be playing Wood Elves. All of the units, I think, have a function.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, you can basically take what you want, almost, and be successful based on your own skill as a player, which I don't think is the case in every army.
No.
I think there are armies where it's just like some things you are definitely handicapping yourself. I don't think that's the case with Wood Elves. And I think that makes for a really good position to be in that you can make choices to make the army that you want to play as. Obviously, like, Dryads or branch wraiths aren't the best things ever, but they're also not the absolute worst. So if you wanted to do an army like that, certainly it can be done.
Yeah, I guess that's right. If you wanted to really go down you can't, if you're playing strictly according to rules, you can't just take an army of 3 spirits, because you've got to have your at least 1 unit of Glade Guard, although I guess you could do them as something a bit different. But I think that will probably be the weakest way to play it, is like, right, I'm going to max out my core with Dryads and Treekin, and then have a Treeman Ancient as my general, and a load of Treemen. You would, I think, probably struggle with that army.
Yeah, I
but
suppose
it wouldn't be
absolutely
terrible. But yeah, then you're really saying I'm only wanting one type of unit, and so you shouldn't expect it to work that well, probably.
Yeah, whereas I think a unit, what I was getting at, I think more was if you have like a unit of Dryads, it's not just like sinking the ship. You can definitely be taking some tree spirits and still be in the running for a good game against most things.
Yeah. And they've got a role. They might be a bit overcosted or whatever, but they've got a role.
Yeah, agreed. So I think we'll close it out there. Thank you very much for coming on, Phil. Both times.
No problem.
Both times. If everyone enjoyed it, don't forget to do all the YouTubey things like, comment, and subscribe. It does let me and Phil, importantly, know that you like this content, so that Phil will be encouraged to come back on and join me for other guides. And if you really like it, there is a Patreon link below where you can get yourself ad-free videos, podcast formats of these Tuesday videos, as well as access to the Discord and dice. And with that, I think we'll join everyone next time. See you in a bit.
See ya.